Have you ever looked at somebody's posted art and wondered, how did she do that? Well, in this video tutorial, I'm going to reveal my secret. I'm going to share with you how I created this textured, dramatic background. And it's easier than you think. And here's the secret. I am using this bubble swirl stencil. It's a 12 by 12 stencil. It has a lot of different patterns and shapes on it. And I am going to use a big chunk of it on my base level for my background. Then I'm going to use napkins and add that focal image to it. But I am not going to work hard trying to get this texture and pattern and interest into my background. I'm going to use what's in the stencil and I'm going to use modeling paste. So both the stencil and the modeling paste comes from the Crafter's Workshop. There's a link in the description box. I like to apply my modeling paste with a key card. I find I get the most success. I have taped down my stencil because I don't want it to move. I'm going to apply the modeling paste for the whole 7 by 10 background, and I don't want it to shift around. Once you put some down, like here, it tends to hold it in place as well. So you can use that to your benefit. I'm getting a fairly even coat, but I'm not being overly particular. Now, using the stencil, I'm using that artist's patterns, shapes, designs on my background. But I am going to add to it down the road to make it really pop. And it's a bit of a journey, so stick with me. So back to this, I'm putting an even coat of the modeling paste across the entire background. Normally, I don't do that, but I want to go quick and easy. And when you have stencils like this one, you can't go wrong. Once that's on, I'm going to off. Once I've got it covered, I'm going to lift up the stencil. I will be washing the modeling paste off of the stencil. You don't want to leave it on there. It'll ruin your stencil. And then I'm going to make sure that this gets completely dry. You can use a heat tool or set it aside. Do this on a separate day and let it dry completely. I like to apply heat from the top and the bottom. So while it's drying, I'm going to remove the excess plies from the napkin. Now, this is 1/4 of the napkin. There are 4 identical panels to this napkin, and I got this napkin from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. So I just want to remove the excess ones. Now, because I'm going to glue that napkin down, I want to make sure that it's very white underneath. My snowman's white, and I don't even want that a little bit off color, a little gray from my modeling paste. So I'm giving this a coat of gesso just to whiten everything out. And it also is going to allow whatever color medium I put on it to go on more easily. So I'm going to put my snowman right there. But before I do that, I just want to get rid of any of the hard, straight edges. I'm very anti-straight edges. I like that deckled edge. Now, I was really inspired by this snowman napkin. It's not exactly pure white behind it. There are watercolor blues and yellows. And I am going to try to duplicate that in my background. I'm going to take inspiration from this. So again, I am using what another artist has given me and building on it. So we don't have to recreate the wheel. We can just build on what we've been given or what we see from other artists, be they stencil artists or napkin artists. So I am going to glue this down right here. I'm going to get a little bit more off of it. I don't need that bulk there. So as I work, I'm thinking, what am I going to be doing next? Is my plan, what plan I had, still viable? Because sometimes you've got to pivot and change what you're going to do. Love this napkin. This napkin is so versatile, and I will have no problem using up the 4 panels. So I'm just putting a coat of the fluid matte medium underneath. Now remember, this is textured, so when I apply the matte medium to the top, I have to be gentle because the napkin gets wet, gets fragile, and we've already got some sharp edges underneath it with that modeling paste. However, I had absolutely no difficulties with this napkin. Some napkins seem to melt and dissolve and become even more fragile. This one, obviously a good quality. So you see where the color around the snowman is? That's what I'm going to build on. So I don't want to see that mark where the napkin ends and my background begins. I'm going to hopefully build that out and hopefully answer your question. How did she create this dramatic background? Loving the texture on there, loving the patterning, the flow. So now that this is glued down, I'm going to get out my heat tool and dry it. Now, I decided I love the watercolor effect, but watercolors will reactivate down the road if you put wet medium. So I'm going to use my Inktense blocks. At least that's what I'm thinking right here. So I'm just matching up the blues, the greens, the reds, the yellows to the colors that I've swatched out from my Inktense blocks. If you're not familiar with the Inktense blocks, they are ink that is water activated. But when they're dry, they will be permanent and they do not smudge. So here I put on a coat of that yellow. It's kind of a Naples yellow color. And I'm activating it. And then I'm noticing, well, some of my napkin, there's that hard edge. And I realized that I forgot to do a step. And that is just put a little bit of gesso along the border of where the napkin ends and where the paper begins. And I find if I tap, tap, tap with my finger here, it just helps get rid of that hard line or that hard edge. I'm not trying to be so perfect. And I find the best tool for this application is my finger. But you can use a brush if finger painting isn't your thing. These Inktense blocks I've had for over 10 years. They are broken, but they are wonderful addition to my mixed media. So here I'm adding the yellow. And, I'm looking at this now. I don't know why I thought I needed to do so the next few steps because I'm loving the look of the yellow. So there are a lot of different options to this background. But in my mind, I wanted to bring out that texture. So I needed to add some contrasting colors. So I'm bringing in the blues and using these water activated mediums. You can see how it's pulling in the nooks and crannies and bringing out some of that stenciling. I did say that there's a bit of a dance going on here. I'm adding, I'm taking away, I'm adding, I'm taking away, and I'm building my background. I'm not sure 100% where I'm going to go. I have a picture in my head. I want the purples down here. I just know I'll know when I get there. And that isn't always a straight line. So I'm just adding some of the blues, purples, greens in the various places on the background. I want this to be a night sky or afternoon sky that's full of interest. Although right now, what I'm thinking is, oh, that I've got a hot mess going on now. So I'm just building up colors. And part of my problem here, and I run into this all the time, is when I'm working in pastels, I like the look, but then it's something missing. So I'm giving this a time to dry. I figure, okay, you know what? I'm not happy right now, but I'm going to give this a dry. So I gave it a dry to see how much color. And then I thought, okay, I need to brighten the yellow here. So I'm going in and adding more pigment. One of the things I find with the Inktense blocks is you often have to build up to get the depth of color that you want. So I'm liking the brighter yellow, but I'm still not sure about the background. So I move on. I go to painting. I think I painted the scarf with the colors in there. I think I lost that footage. And now I'm painting the tree and I'm just dropping in color, keeping very much with that watercolor look that the artist of the napkin gave me. And I'm just dropping in that color, mixing several colors together as I go. And then I decide, you know what? I'm going to take the background back and I apply a coat of white gesso, take it back to square one or almost square one. And I add some gesso and I'm drying it. And you're going to see me adding a little bit more gesso, getting rid of that color because, well, I didn't like what I was seeing. It's not that it was bad. It's just that it didn't match the picture in my head of what I wanted to achieve. So here I've got the heat tool going and I'm applying gesso and I'm just taking it back to white. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Because I wanted more depth of color, I decided to use some of my acrylic paints. So I grabbed my Naples yellow in acrylic paint, water it down, and I'm putting it on. This is giving me a more opaque color. And since I want it a lot more yellow and I wanted it a little darker, I thought, okay. And again, I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, what was wrong with this, Karen? I love this right now. I'm going over top of the colors and it's just because I made that mistake, I have some colors that was caught in the nooks and crannies of the modeling paste, and it's just added to it. Remember, mixed media art journaling is all about those layers and not just the top layer. So I'm really, like I said, right, liking this right now, and I could have left it as it is, but I didn't. So I'm giving it a dry, and then I'm taking the Inktense block, getting it on a makeup sponge, and very lightly going over top of the modeling paste stenciling. This is allowing that stenciling, those patterns to come up. I wanted to showcase that. And if it was all yellow, I couldn't do that. So now I've got a pretty much yellow base, and then I'm using the blues, the greens, the purples to bring out the texture pattern. Now I have an idea of doing this on a cradled wood panel or on a canvas, but I am practicing figuring it out on my art journal page. And that's one of the reasons I use my art journal page is to practice, to experiment, to figure things out so that when I go and do it on a canvas or a cradled wood panel, I'm not going to make those mistakes. I already know. So here it's like magic, that stenciling, that texture is coming up. And this is just building so much depth and making it look So much more dramatic. Love the colors. It's kind of a Prussian blue, aquamarine with that Naples yellow. At this point, I'm thinking I'm liking the background, but I'm going to bide my time and I'm going to edge it. And I've used some black acrylic paint on my angle brush, and it's just edging it right now is allowing me to frame my picture, and it allows me to look at it and decide, am I done? When I apply the white shading, it's kind of going into the page, getting caught in the nooks and crannies of the texture paste that's there. And I'm loving that look. So yes, I did overpaint with the Inktense blocks the scarf, the hat, and the body of the snowman. Wherever you see color, I tweaked that color, and now I'm going and I'm shading it. I also applied some white gesso to the body of the snowman to make it look more painterly. I'm shading here and I've added the color because I want that snowman to stand out from the background. Yes, there's a lot of interest in my background. I wanted a very dynamic um, background, but I don't want to lose my snowman. So you can see, you no longer see where the napkin ends and the paper begins. I've melded those two seamlessly. And that's what you want to do when you're using a napkin. Give him a little bit of a shadow here. And I grab my fine line applicator and I'm just flooding the buttons and the eyes of the snowman. You could, if you don't have a fine line applicator bottle, you could absolutely use a Posca pen or gel pen, whatever you have. And then I'm just painting in the twigs. Forgot to overpaint that area when I did it before. I love how that stencil has made it looks like the sky is dancing. And that's what I wanted. Movement, pattern, interest in my background. I'm just mixing black and some, I think it's burnt umber, and painting in these twigs here. This napkin, I don't believe I told you what it was called. It is one of the new ones from NINNYSNAPKINS.com, and it's called Snowman in Nature. So I gave it a fitting backdrop. And you will have noted, even when I was using my acrylic paints on top of the Inktense, my Inktense blocks, they did not reactivate. They stayed firm. So I don't have to worry about smudging. And that's why I like using products that are permanent. I'm giving it a splash and splatter of gold paint. I love using my fan brush to splatter with. I get the best results that way. This is adding a little bling to the page and bringing out more of that yellow. Then I decided, I really like the purple. There's purple on that hat, there's purple on the bottom. And so I grabbed some of the purple paint and I'm thinning it out there. Sorry, that's a little bit off screen. I'm thinning it out and then I'm going to splatter with the purple to bring some dark splatters to it. It just seemed to need it. Then I decide I'm going to get a little bit of black on the makeup sponge and I'm going over just a little bit of the areas and it's just bringing out that stenciling all the more. It deepens and darkens the background and just makes it, in my mind, more dramatic than it was. I'm completely happy with my end result. So grab a stencil, use modeling paste, bring it out with your acrylic paints, with your Inktense blocks, and create your own dramatic background for the focal image of your choice. I cut out a sentiment, I bubble cut around it. That's just leaving a little bit of white around it. And I just put warm winter wishes. I could do something similar like this on a card. I could do it on a wood panel or whatever substrate that I want. What sentiment would you put with this snowman and that background? And here I'm putting on wet medium and my color behind the Inktense blocks stays fixed. I heat up the tape, remove it from the coil from the top here, and now when I have all my pages done, I can reassemble my art journal page. And there is the finished page. It was a bit of a journey, but a journey well worth it because I love where it ended up. And there's the original napkin. Different background, different effect. Until next time, go get creative.